Vulnerability. When you move the clocks ahead, I'm very vulnerable. But you all look really good 1 hour later. It's all good. I suppose you have a lot of wonderful memories of being in church that you embrace. It's very joyful to look back and express gratitude for the cherished events that people experience in the life of any church. But I want to ask you something. Have you ever felt that there were miracles all around you? Anybody know of a miracle that you wanted to share? Any miracles? No, see, you think they're available. Which miracle? For somebody else? For you? Any miracle at all? Oh, go right ahead. Oh, there you go. There. Yes. A brake job? Oh. Because, where'd you go to get your brake job? I got my brake job. And then they did the muffler, and then, well, anyway, a great job. Okay, thank you. Oh. You did that just because you're the priest, and, yeah, all right. I mean, yeah, who can argue with that, right? It's a wonderful thing. Go ahead. That's right. I love that. See, I love that. See? I love all the others, too, and the great job, which I thought was break. Let me take you back to early 1800s. It was a white clapboard church. Oh, the people were the salt of the earth. And they're just wonderful people, most of them farmers. There were a couple of blacksmiths in there. Hard-working people. Well, one couple went to that church. Actually, everybody went to that church. There was no other church around. But they attended regularly. He was 95 pounds and stood about 4'11". She was 380 pounds and stood 6'2". Oh, she was mean to him. When he annoyed her, she would swat him away and he'd hit the wall. She was mean. And everybody in the church said, she's very mean. She yells all the time at him. And I don't understand how he could put up with that. Well, she did one too many yellings. And she either popped a vessel, she just keeled over and died. Well, the local townspeople, 18 pallbearers, they built a coffin the size of a piano, and they had the service. The minister did a good job with the eulogy, hard as it was. And in between the church and the cemetery, right near the church, right next door, was a brook, a wide brook. And you had to be careful as you were walking among the rocks. You didn't want to slip. So they're going out of the church and they're walking over to the cemetery through the brook, and he had it. His dear wife had died. This little man bellowed, "Oh, no, don't leave me. And he jumped up onto the casket, which was bigger than most, and caused some of the fellas who were walking to slip. And it dropped the coffin, and out she popped, alive. And he was so thrilled. Nobody understood why he was so thrilled. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. Well, except everything calmed down. They went back home, and she was meaner than she was before. And not only would she swat him against the wall, she'd make sure he'd kind of go through it, his impression or whatever. I mean, her needs, he was going to be the servant. And he didn't know what to do. Well, she did it again. And she yelled too much. And she dropped dead again. Well, they had another service. Same thing. The white clapboard church, the same thing, going over by the thing. Once again, he got emotional. Once again, he jumped onto the coffin. They dropped it again. Bang! She popped out again. Alive. A miracle. Well, things calmed down again. And she was meaner the third time than she was all the other times. Nobody understood this. Well, guess what? She died again. And the service went as it had gone, and it walked around the 18 fellas and the big coffin. And now 5 counties of people kind of showed up for this funeral. And everybody was watching. And just as they got to the brook area, everybody's eyes were on this little man, 4'11" and 95 pounds. And he grabbed hold of the coffin and whispered, "Steady, boys." Now, as apocryphal as that story is, we know that there are some things that we cannot explain. And I think that people make up things or they rationalize things because it is easier to do that than live with the ambiguity of that which they don't know. It's one area of the human condition that we overlook and so often deny because of the discomfort it causes. The plague of denying our human condition is not new. Go on the list. Amos to Micah to Hosea to Isaiah and the prophets. Everybody railed against the plasticity of the faith communities they serve. For unless religion changed lives and has genuine meaning, then such a worship is a stench in the nostrils of God. They called such a religion a farce. Oh, these words were harsh. And I know that when we come to church, are we ready to say, I'm not play acting? No way. Are we ready to commit our lives to the requisites of truth and justice and love and righteousness? Are we ready? For the prophets of old declared, I despise your ceremonies. I hate your feasts. They wanted to make it very clear that, talking a good game in church is not enough. And they were right. Now, most people don't even know what a good Samaritan is. Where did it come from? Samaritans. The lawyer asks Jesus, how might I get myself a first-class ticket and ride right into heaven on that ticket? Well, taking a reference from Deuteronomy and Leviticus, Jesus outlines with abundant clarity in the parable of the Good Samaritan what the cost of discipleship is. Anyone will get anywhere riding in on a first-class ticket. If you want to make a better world, first you must love your neighbor as you love yourself. And you may say, well, he should have known that. He was a good lawyer. Many are invited, but few are chosen. You may ask the question that I always ask, who is my neighbor? And with your permission, I would like to pause. See, ministers can do that. we can switch gears right away, right here, and go into the golden days of our frontier. Louis L'Amour wrote novels about the Old West and gave a telling account of what it was like to ride the stagecoach back in the day. The good old days before we had trains, planes, buses, and automobiles. And he tells us 3 kinds of tickets that you would purchase. I remember one time I got myself up into first class on a plane. You know, I call myself a left-turn Christian when I was, what is a left-turn Christian? You know, when you get on the plane, the flight attendant says, hi, nice that you're flying with us. And they direct you over to the ocean of seats that way. They're just regular seats. It's called coach. Now, if you happen to somehow get up to the front and turn left, those seats are comfortable. Those seats recline. I swear the flight attendants even look better. But, they pour you the mimosa. Aren't you glad you're not back there in the sardine thing with the cattle? They play it up, right? And, I'm putting my luggage up there. I'm in first class. And the fella said, excuse me, I know that you're here on a promotional or something. But I don't want your luggage to touch my luggage up there in the overhead. He had Louis Vuitton. I had Lark. All right? And he said, just what are you doing anyway? I said, well, it was obvious. I was trying to put my luggage away. Nope. So I said to him what I thought he thought. I said, well, it's obvious. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to steal your luggage and leave you with mine. That's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to get your luggage away from you so I could have that. I mean, I went into a Louis Vuitton store once. Oh, Louis Vuitton luggage. And it's clear I didn't belong there. May I help you? You know how they talk. And I quickly had to say, yes, you can help me. Excuse me, you see that big chest right there? See that big? Yes. I just can't imagine. How do you justify that chest? You know, the cost of it. I mean, it's a chest. It's for carrying things. How is it that you could charge $2,000 for that? Excuse me, sir. That's $20,000. Never mind. You see, Louis L'Amour tells us 3 kinds of tickets you could purchase if you were planning to ride the stagecoach. If you happen to have been born in that era, he says, first of all, you could buy yourself an expensive first-class ticket if you had the money. And with that ticket, you're entitled to sit in the velvet coach section with cushions and comfort. They had it back then. All right, it was a stagecoach. It wasn't the airlines. I mean, I was looking at it on YouTube. You could actually get your own apartment and your own concierge if you go. I guess you have to have $25,000 from London to Dubai. Well, I guess I'm never going to go from London to Dubai because I don't have that kind of money for that. Well, he says you could buy yourself a first-class ticket. Now, if the stagecoach got stuck or there was a delay or a spoke needed to be fixed in the repair of the wheels, whatever, you were entitled to sit there and remain seated, for you had a first-class ticket. And if you didn't have the money for first class, you could buy yourself a second-class ticket. And that second-class ticket entitled, you could just get off the stagecoach and you could watch the repair. Others would fix the problem, and when the problem became fixed, a good Southern phrase, you could simply get right back on that coach without so much as lifting a finger. Your second-class ticket preempted you from doing any manual labor concerning the stagecoach. Then there was a third-class ticket that most people could afford to buy. And it obligated you to hitch a ride on the stagecoach, usually up there with the luggage and the trunks on the top. hold on if there was any sharp turns. If there's a problem, you were the first to get off, and you were the first to start pushing, putting your shoulder to the wheel and get yourself all dirty and do what you had to do to get the problem fixed and to end the delay. Now, I believe that this analogy that Lamore points to and describes applies to the church. People in church bring their catered and pampered views into the church. Some feel that they are entitled to be served. They feel that they are holders of first-class tickets, and everyone should serve them since their status entitles them to the role. And the second-class ticket holders in church, they're there too. They ride along detached and declare unapologetically they prefer to come to church on Sundays. That's all they want, and do nothing else. They prefer to stand to the side and see how the problems will be solved. But thank goodness for the UU Church. Oh, these are first-class people with third-class tickets. Oh, they ride along until something goes wrong. And there's a problem. They roll up their sleeves and get the job done. Am I wrong? I got mild amens on that one. Well, their rewards are few, and their call to ministry is invaluable. And in the present, as we leave the Old West, this analogy is as old as time itself. And I know lots of clergy who milked this cow as far as they could. I mean, have you ever been with clergy? Well, I know, Desi, you've been with clergy. Oh my gosh. They really feel that you ought to just kneel and kiss their ring. Privileged people, very important leaders. A lot of clergy I know have that disease of first-class mentality. There's no doubt these priests had a first-class ticket. And yet UUs have third-class tickets. They confound their class hierarchy by doing what has to be done and help solve the problems. You know, in the Methodist Church, John Wesley said the world was his parish. Well, what does it mean to be in third class? And trust me, I've been there more times than I ever wish I would be. It means taking risks. It means getting your hands dirty. It means expanding your neighborhood and seeing people who need you. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. They that try to save themselves will lose their lives, and those that give their lives will live forever. That is the UU mindset. When it was said these humble servants would be lifted up, what was the one question that we asked? What is the one question we asked? I believe is, what kind of Unitarian Universalist will I be? And we are tempted with taking a first-class ticket. Instead, we choose the road less traveled, as Henry Nouwen has said, speaks about the wounded healer. Unitarian Universalists choose the issue. First-class love to third-class ticket holders. We call these people the chosen people, not for privilege, but for responsibility. And the message is very clear. We must get off the stagecoach of life when problems emerge and live for the human spirit. That's our miracle, now, here, in this place. Now, I met many people in the course of ministry in which, wow, that's a lot of years, isn't it? I've been at this a couple of years. Actually, I've been at this a lot of years. And I've met many first-class ticket holders who feel that someone else should do that dirty work. Have you ever heard of people like that? And as a pastor, sadly, no matter how much you try to do for some of these people, it's never enough. I remember when I first started in ministry, this woman, she was in an apartment complex, and they said, oh, she's sitting home, she has nothing, she doesn't even have a TV. I went out and bought her a TV at one of these places that fixes TVs, and it was a used TV. And it was in the middle of winter. Now, in New Jersey, it's cold. I mean, don't have any illusions. It's cold up there. But I got up to the top of that roof, and I put this, I guess these rabbit ears, the antenna, and I took the wire, and I went all the way over it, and then I got another ladder, and I went way up. My hands were freezing, and I bore a hole through the corner by her window, and I got that thing through there. And then I finally came back inside, and I hooked it up, and she's sitting there watching this, and I said, well, let's turn it on. And we turned it on, and she said, oh, it's not a color TV? It's true. No matter how little you do, no matter how much you do for other people, never enough. But other people, no matter how little you do, oh my gracious, they are so grateful and thankful. Invariably, you discover they're members of the church holding third-class tickets. Why? To make a world a better place. They have forgotten the hierarchy of who's who and who needs. See, the last thing you ought to do in your lives is to patronize or to be paternal to people. Because people that you work for, you help, people that you wanna make a difference in their lives, they have more to teach you and give you than you have to give or teach them. There's just one reason you ought to help people, to share with people in their suffering. That's why you do it. You already know this story. I remember the greatest movie I've seen. That's because I'm in love with her. Julia Roberts. Pretty Woman. You remember that? Richard Gere, 1991. She's a prostitute. And he's a rich hedge fund corporate raider. Well, she gives him back the money she earned as a lady of the evening because she had this dream of being rescued by the knight in shining armor, riding in on a white horse, climbing up the tower to rescue her. That was her dream. Well, in the end, he said, oh, this will help you to get an apartment. She said, that's just geography. Well, he finally realizes, through happenstance, he should go back and get her. And the concierge, he was so great that it's amazing when you have these things and then you lose them. Well, he had his white limousine, and he had his flowers and the music playing, and, well, he went right by her house, which is way on the other side of town. And he was afraid of heights, so he climbed up the fire escape, and he was very much afraid of doing that. And she was kind of giggling, watching him struggle to try to get up to her. Well, finally he gets to her, and he says to her, what happens now after he rescues her? And she turns to him and says, she rescues him right back. Oh, we don't realize the value of what it is when we help people. It's just, we live in a pampered and catered society. Brant took me to a really great Cuban restaurant for breakfast. Man, it was delicious. But I noticed something. We were driving on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Do you notice something about any Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard anywhere? It's always in a blighted section, very bad. We get to the Cuban restaurant. The greatest food, the greatest people. There's pictures of famous people all over the place who've been in that restaurant, Barack Obama being one of them. But the windows are covered with wrought iron protection. Every opening of that building. Oh, that's too bad. One thing's for sure, on Highway A1A, and everybody's got one in every town, A1A, where the mansions are, there's never going to be a Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. We know that. Right? We live in a pampered and catered society. Psychologists call this the catered culture. When we go to a restaurant, we expect to be pampered, and we're disappointed with poor service. Joining a church is not for privilege, it's for servanthood. One man says to his wife, honey, I'm too sick to help you with the chores, the house chores. He really wants her to do the house chores. She makes him go to the doctor. And the doctor says, you're not sick. You're just lazy. And he said, well, Doc, my wife is in the waiting room. Could you give me a medical term for that so I could tell her what I have? You see, you're definitely called to this church on this day. You are. I know I am. You're sitting on the premises, but you're also standing on the promises. There's many people who are in the church with first-class tickets who act like they're Monday morning quarterbacks. You ever know people like that? They bail out when the work needs to be done and look to the third-class ticket holders to do the work. And I'm looking at you third-class people. I'm not going to mention your name. And the second-class ticket holders say under their breath as they watch, you know, those church people, they couldn't organize a two-car parade. I wouldn't do it like that. No? They have the spectator mindset, and it's a disease, and they stand aside when they're needed the most. And many years ago, I went to Dachau in Germany, a Holocaust museum now, but once it was a place where people were gassed just because of their religion for being different. And when I think of that period, I think of people I read about, Dietrich Bonhoeffer and Elie Wiesel and Frank. But there was also a German pastor who stood up to those Nazis, Reverend Martin Niemöller. He made it out. He lived. He was in that Dachau prison for 7 years, from 1938 to 1945. And in his writings, you all know, I know you know it. One day the Nazis came for the Jews, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't Jewish. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't speak up because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Catholics, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a Catholic. Then they came for me, and no one was left to speak up. See, this is where you are, the you. We do not ignore the world or many of its problems. We can't stand around and just watch problems become solved. An injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Thank God for those third-class ticket holders who are willing to work and anxious to serve. I spoke with a man. I'm getting lists of people. Here, you ought to go visit this one. You ought to visit this one. You ought to visit. Well, I contacted one fella, and he went into the long diatribe. He said, oh, no, the church is ready to close. He said, nah, they're just hanging out. I said, really? You know that for a fact? Well, I haven't been there in such a long time. Aha! You haven't? Well, I asked him to, before he makes any decision, could he please just watch this sermon this Sunday? So if you're watching, my good friend, this church is not closing, it's not diminishing, it's enhancing its work. They are not part of the problem, but they are part of the solution. You're ready to put your shoulder to the wheel and push. I asked the question, I think it's a very valid one. What would we do without you? I met a man who said, you know, Rev, you met them too. I want to go to church to be fed. Yeah? Yeah, I want to be fed. I want the music. I want the preaching. I even want the coffee. I want everything to feed me. I want to be fed. You ever hear people say that? And I said, well, that's okay. Yeah, he said, I figured you'd understand, Reverend Jack. Oh, I do understand. That sounds great, really great. But before you do join any church, let me tell you something that maybe the UUs can teach you. I do hope you take off that bib and put on an apron. Give a little love and it'll all come back to you. What kind of ticket are you traveling on? Unitarian Universalists issue first-class love to third-class ticket holders. I am so grateful that you've gotten rid of your Louis Vuitton luggage. The haughty world baggage mentality. Many are invited and few are chosen. And my hope for you, the freedom train is coming, but you got to register to ride. What kind of ticket do you have? I see them. I see Unitarians, first-class people with third-class tickets. And I love you. Amen.